we're just gonna go straight into it. You already seen the thumbnail, so you already know what I'm gonna say. Tabata just hates his villains. Like Black Clover, at this point, is just committed to not having any good villains in their story whatsoever. Like, it just. I didn't even want to make this kind of video because I feel like I've had a negative opinion on what's been going on in the story. But honestly, it bothers me a lot. It really does. Like, in the post time skip, we've not really had much of a reason to fear or to be worried about any villain that has been introduced at all.
No, he's got a point.
Like it feels like at this point that Tabata is literally trying to not have a really impactful or long-standing villain. Like that's honestly what it feels like to me. It's just so weird because like when you look at like a lot of the other series in Jump right now, a lot of the other series have pretty decent villains, or at least have one or two that are like relatively decent. Like regardless of how you feel about Shiggy and All for One and all of that going on in My Hero, still a solid villain going on like over the course of multiple arcs. Regardless of how you felt about Maito or Mahito, however you say his name in JJK, you have to admit over the course of the story, he did a really good job. But like with Black Clover and the Dark Triad, and now moving on to Morris, and now we've forgotten about Morris. Who cares now? He two-shotted by the backup Bulls, two-shotted by those guys. Moving on to Lucifaro or the Force of Gratis sibling, whoever the next villain of the week is going to be for Black Clover. It's like, why should we care as the reader is kind of where I'm at. Like, why should I actually care about this next villain, whoever it is? Like, I have no reason to assume that the Bulls just aren't, that the Black Bulls aren't just going to pull through, or even if it isn't the Black Bulls, I have no reason to assume that the villain isn't going to be defeated in his first showing. That's kind of where I am on this one. So in like this last chapter, we see that Morris is absolutely done, and Lucifer makes his way out, and he basically does this thing where he combines all the devils from the first and second levels into one giant amalgamation of just massive Lucifer devil host power, whatever. And I really like what Josuke said about this, because Josuke said this is just Tabata having a creative way to get rid of all of the first or all of the devils on the first and second levels, like just having them all in one spot, which is probably true. And I kind of like that he said that because it makes a lot of sense. And don't get me wrong, I do like that the plot of Black Clover from this chapter is like progressing, like it is moving like on to the next step. Like it does feel like it is definitively moving forward and not kind of just like how it was last chapter, whereas the whole thing was a Yami flashback and we didn't really go anywhere. I do like that aspect of it. It's just the fact that like we keep going from like all these different villains that don't really mean anything overall in the story, and we don't like, they're not even getting fully fleshed out, they're just getting clapped, and it's just like I don't know, it just makes the story feel stale, you know, like not very threatening. Like to me, like just to me that is how like just to me that is how it is starting to feel with everything that has been going on recently. And I know a lot of people are already off of the Morris train or have the excuses for Morris and like, oh, you know, he went up against all of the Black Bulls and that's a lot of hacks. Like I get it, you know, he did, but at the same time, none of the really important people fought. You know, like not like Asta went Devil Union, or he had to deal with Saint Stage, or he didn't even have to deal with any ultimate magic. He literally just dealt with all of the like he dealt with all of the weakest members. Like he dealt with all of the weakest members of the Black Bulls, not including Magna. Like that's essentially who he lost. So like he lost to Gauche Gray, Henry, and Gordon, because Vanessa couldn't even do anything. Fate Magic was irrelevant in that fight. So he lost to just those 4 people, which is just like, it's just kind of whack. It just really is kind of whack. And then like I get it. People say like, oh well, he's not a fighter, but at the same time, it's like you have 1200 years of knowledge and experience from the previous Heart Queens, as well as 100% devil power, as well as the strongest devil being Lucifaro on your side. It's like you would think he would have put up at least a slightly better fight and not got two-shotted. And people have already moved on to, oh well, the Zogratis 4th sibling is going to be the new villain. But it's like, guys, like we've done this so many times where it's like, oh yeah, the big bad villain is Dante, and then Dante looks bad. It's like, okay, well then the next big bad thing is going to be Xenon, and Xenon's done. And it's like, well, it's Morris. It's actually Morris. Morris is going to be the real guy. Now Morris is beaten, and now we're moving on to the 4th sibling. It's like, there's definitely a pattern here where it's like, I feel like we keep going on to whoever the next quote unquote big villain is going to be, and it just kind of falls short. And granted, it could end up being with the big bad, or the next bad is going to be Lucifaro. But at the same time, at the end of last arc, the very last big battle was a devil, Zagrid. So I feel like having that repeated again in the second half, just on a bigger scale, it's kind of meh. It's just kind of meh to me. Like I don't know if I can have that exact same hype for it, seeing as that it's kind of already been done within the same story. Now some people could definitely make the argument that I'm being a little harsh, which I wouldn't completely disagree. But at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't I have really big expectations for one of my favorite series? That's the way I kind of view it. Like, why wouldn't I expect, a lot of dope stuff from this series, seeing as how much potential the story has had and seeing how much potential characters like Morris had. So that's kind of my overall views. Like I said before, I am enjoying the fact that the plot is getting pushed, and I am still hopeful that, something will come out of all of these villains getting clapped. Be it maybe Asta will have a long-running villain in like this next arc, maybe with him going into the underworld, or maybe Lucifaro will win here, and it'll be like this situation where they have to come back and beat him later. There definitely is like some breadcrumbs here. There's definitely a little bit of hope still in here that we may be able to salvage a villain out of all this, but just at this exact moment, it's just not looking too good. And I can definitively say that Tabata hates villains. He just does. Tabata hates villains. He he doesn't want his villains to do anything great unless they're going to be redeemed later, like the elves. That's like the only way I'm seeing it here. And again, I do apologize for this more like ranty style, but I just, after last chapter, or I guess after these last 3 chapters, it's just been really in my mind. Like, 'cause I never expected I never expected that Morris would actually be beaten, already being used by Lucifer after like 2 or 3 chapters of being, I guess, center stage at it, like, if you even want to call it that, because it was just so short lived. Overall, I really wanted to know you guys' opinions on the Black Clover villain situation. Like, do you guys think that how villains have been handled so far in the story, or at least in the post time skip, do you think it's been handled well, or are you one of those people that also wish that we kind of got more out of the villain aspect in Black Clover, because it is kind of lacking? I'm just really curious to see where my viewer base is concerning that, because it just seems weird. Like, I feel like for the most part what I see is pretty mixed, but I just want to know what you guys exactly think about it. So make sure you guys leave a like on the video, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content. Make sure you let me know how you guys are feeling about the villains in Black Clover, because I'm just like, me personally, I think, like I said, Tabata hates villains, but I just want to know what you guys think. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all in my next video.